Hashtag a black single dad took a night job no one wanted. By morning, the billionaire was at his door. The security camera footage would later go viral, a disheveled man in a janitor's uniform discovering something that would change everything, followed by dawn footage of a sleek black Bentley pulling up to his modest apartment building. Inside that car sat Maxwell Reed, the reclusive tech billionaire who hadn't been seen in public for 3 years. "I need to speak with the man who saved my company," he told the driver. But Terrell Jackson wasn't thinking about saving companies when he took that night shift, he was just trying to save his daughter. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of everyday heroes who remind us that sometimes our greatest moments come when we're just trying to make it through another day. Terrell Jackson stared at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, the bold red letters blurring as exhaustion washed over him. At 34, this wasn't where he'd imagined his life would be, a single father to 8-year-old Zoe, 3 months behind on rent, and now facing homelessness in 2 weeks. "Daddy? What's that paper?" Zoe's small voice came from behind him, her backpack still on from the after-school program where she stayed until Terrell finished his day job at the auto repair shop. He quickly folded the notice and tucked it into his pocket. "Just some grown-up mail, baby girl. How was school today?" Zoe launched into a story about her science project as Terrell unlocked the door to their small 2-bedroom apartment. The place wasn't much, but it was home, the only stable home Zoe had known since her mother walked out when she was 3. The thought of losing it made Terrell's chest tighten. After dinner, macaroni and cheese stretched with extra pasta to make it last, Terrell tucked Zoe into bed and called his sister, Letitia. "I need another favor," he said quietly, pacing in the narrow hallway. "What's going on, Terrell?" Concern laced Letitia's voice. "I found a night job. Cleaning offices at Horizon Tech. Nobody wants it because it's overnight, but it pays double the regular rate. I can catch up on rent if I take it." "And Zoe?" "That's the favor. I need you to stay with her overnight, just for a couple weeks until I get caught up." Letitia sighed. "You know I love that girl like she's my own, but I've got early shifts at the hospital. Please, Tish. I'm out of options." After a long pause, she agreed. 2 weeks, Terrell. Then we figure something else out. "Thank you. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. That's what family's for." The next evening, Terrell kissed Zoe goodbye, promising to be back before she woke up. Letitia shooed him out the door. "Go. We'll be fine." Horizon Tech occupied a gleaming skyscraper downtown, all glass and steel reaching toward the stars. The security guard barely looked up from his phone as Terrell signed in and received his temporary access card. "Cleaning supplies are in the basement," the guard mumbled. "You're responsible for floors 30 through 40. Nobody's supposed to be there, but the big boss sometimes works late in the penthouse. Stay out of his way if you see him." "The big boss?" "Maxwell Reed. Founder, CEO, billionaire extraordinaire. Though nobody's actually seen him in years. Rumor is he lives in the penthouse office now." Terrell nodded and headed for the service elevator. He'd heard of Reed, everyone had. The man had revolutionized quantum computing before turning 30, built Horizon Tech into a global powerhouse, and then virtually disappeared from public life following some personal tragedy the tabloids had feasted on. The upper floors were eerily quiet as Terrell worked his way through them, vacuuming carpets, emptying trash bins, and wiping down surfaces. The work was mindless but exhausting. By 2 a.m., he'd reached the 39th floor, executive offices with views that made the city below look like a circuit board of lights. As he emptied a trash can in one office, a crumpled paper caught his eye. He normally wouldn't have paid attention, but the bold red stamp reading, "Confidential, Project Nexus," piqued his curiosity. Terrell smoothed out the paper and began to read. His blood ran cold. It was an internal memo detailing plans to sell proprietary technology to a foreign competitor, technology that, according to the memo, was the cornerstone of Horizon's future. The memo was signed by someone named Victor Mercer, Executive VP of Research and Development. Terrell wasn't sure what to do. This wasn't his business, and he desperately needed this job. But something felt deeply wrong. He took a photo of the memo with his phone and continued cleaning, his mind racing. On the 40th floor, he noticed light spilling from beneath a door at the end of the hallway. The penthouse office. As he approached, he heard raised voices. "The board meeting is in 6 hours, Victor." A woman's voice, sharp with tension. "If Reed doesn't show up again, they'll vote to remove him. Your timing is impeccable. Patience, Diane. Once Reed is out, the Nexus sale goes through, we get our payday, and no one's the wiser. The old man's been a recluse for years, he won't even know what hit him until it's too late." Terrell froze. The memo. The conversation. It was a corporate coup in progress. He backed away quietly, but his cleaning cart bumped against the wall with a dull thud. The voices inside went silent. "Check that," the man ordered. Terrell abandoned the cart and ducked into a nearby office, heart pounding. Through a crack in the door, he watched a tall man in an expensive suit step into the hallway, looking around suspiciously. Victor Mercer, he presumed. After a moment, Mercer returned to the penthouse office, closing the door behind him. Terrell waited until he heard the elevator doors close before emerging from his hiding place. He needed to get out of there, but something compelled him toward the penthouse office. If what he'd overheard was true, someone needed to warn this Reed person. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the penthouse door. No answer. He tried the handle. Unlocked. Terrell pushed the door open slowly. The penthouse office was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a vast open space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. One wall was covered in complex equations and diagrams. In the center of the room stood a holographic display showing what looked like molecular structures rotating slowly in the air. "Hello?" Terrell called out. "Mr. Reed?" A voice came from somewhere in the shadows. "Security has already been called. I suggest you explain yourself quickly." Terrell raised his hands. "I'm just the night janitor. I overheard something I think you should know about." A figure emerged from a darkened corner, a man in his early 40s with unkempt dark hair streaked with gray, wearing rumpled clothes that had once been expensive. His eyes were sharp but haunted. "You're Maxwell Reed," Terrell said, recognition dawning. "And you're trespassing in my office." Reed's voice was hoarse, as if rarely used. "Sir, I found something in the trash." Terrell pulled out his phone and showed Reed the photo of the memo. "Then I overheard two people talking, Victor Mercer and someone named Diane. They're planning to sell something called Project Nexus and remove you from the company." Reed's expression darkened as he studied the photo. "The board meeting. It's tomorrow morning." "This morning," Terrell corrected. "In about 5 hours." Reed ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want?" The question caught Terrell off guard. "I don't want anything. It just seemed wrong." Reed studied him for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Terrell. Terrell Jackson." "Well, Terrell Jackson, you may have just saved my company." Reed moved to a desk and pressed a button. "Security, stand down. My visitor is authorized." He turned back to Terrell. "I need to make some calls. Your shift is over. Go home." "That's it? What were you expecting? A reward?" Terrell shook his head. "No, sir. I just wanted to do the right thing." He turned to leave. "Wait," Reed called after him. "How do I reach you?" "I'll be back tomorrow night." "Same shift?" Reed nodded. "Tomorrow, then." Terrell left the building as dawn broke over the city. He was exhausted but somehow lighter, as if he'd done something meaningful for the first time in a long while. He caught the early bus home, slipping into the apartment just as Zoe was waking up. "Daddy! You're back." She threw her arms around him. "I promised, didn't I?" He hugged her tight. "How about some breakfast before school?" The day passed in a blur of exhaustion. Terrell napped while Zoe was at school, then picked her up and made dinner. He was preparing to leave for his second night shift when a knock came at the door. Letitia answered it, then called out with confusion in her voice, "Terrell? There's someone here for you." Standing in the hallway was Maxwell Reed, looking markedly different from the disheveled man in the penthouse. He was clean-shaven, wearing an impeccably tailored suit, his hair neatly combed. Behind him stood a security detail, and through the window, Terrell could see a black Bentley parked outside. "Mr. Jackson," Reed said formally. "May I come in?" Stunned, Terrell nodded and stepped aside. Reed entered the small apartment, looking curiously around at the modest furnishings, the school photos of Zoe on the walls, the science project materials spread across the dining table. "Daddy, who's that?" Zoe appeared in the hallway, curious. "This is Mr. Reed. He's my boss." Reed crouched down to Zoe's level. "You must be Zoe. Your father told me about you." She tilted her head. "He did? He said you're very smart and working on a science project. What's it about?" "Solar energy." Zoe's face lit up. "Want to see?" Before Terrell could intervene, Zoe had taken Reed's hand and was leading him to the dining table where her project sat. To Terrell's surprise, Reed seemed genuinely interested, asking questions and offering suggestions as Zoe explained her work. Letitia raised an eyebrow at Terrell, who could only shrug in bewilderment. After a few minutes, Reed turned to Terrell. "Could we speak privately?" They stepped into the kitchen while Letitia stayed with Zoe. "The board meeting went well," Reed began. "Victor Mercer and Diane Holloway have been removed from the company and are facing criminal charges for corporate espionage. Project Nexus is secure." "That's good news," Terrell said, still confused about why the billionaire was standing in his kitchen. "I did some research on you, Mr. Jackson. Former engineering student at State University. Dropped out in your final year when your daughter was born. Worked various jobs since then. Currently employed at Martinez Auto Repair during the day and, as of yesterday, as a night janitor at my company." Terrell stiffened. "You had me investigated? I like to know who I'm dealing with." Reed's expression softened slightly. "You could have sold that information to our competitors. It would have been worth millions. That never crossed my mind. I believe you. That's why I'm here." Reed reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This contains two things, a check that should cover your immediate financial concerns, and an offer of employment in our engineering department." Terrell stared at the envelope. "I don't understand." "You showed integrity, Mr. Jackson. That's rare. And from what I can see of your daughter's project, intelligence runs in the family." Reed glanced toward the dining room. "The position includes flexible hours and access to our company childcare facility. You won't need to work nights anymore." Terrell opened the envelope with trembling hands. The check amount made his eyes widen. "This is too much. Consider it a finder's fee for uncovering corporate espionage." Reed's tone was matter-of-fact. "The job offer stands regardless of whether you accept the money. Why are you doing this?" Reed was quiet for a moment. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in an accident. I withdrew from everything. Let the company run itself. Nearly lost everything because I couldn't see beyond my grief." He looked toward Zoe again. "Your daughter reminds me of mine. Same curiosity. Same spark. I'm sorry for your loss, Terrell said softly. Reed nodded once, acknowledging the sentiment. Sometimes we need someone to remind us what matters. You did that for me last night. He extended his hand. So, do we have a deal, Mr. Jackson? Terrell looked at the hand, then at the check, then at Zoe laughing with Letitia in the other room. He thought about the eviction notice, about the endless struggle to make ends meet, about the engineering degree he'd never completed. He took Reed's hand and shook it firmly. We have a deal. 6 months later, Terrell sat in his new office at Horizon Tech, reviewing the latest designs for an affordable solar energy system inspired by Zoe's science project. The initiative had been his idea, bringing sustainable energy solutions to low-income communities, and Reed had given him full backing and a team to develop it. Zoe was thriving in the company's advanced education program, where she spent her after-school hours working alongside scientists and engineers. Terrell had moved them to a better apartment closer to work, and for the first time in years, he wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. Reed had changed too. He'd emerged from his self-imposed isolation, taking an active role in the company again. He'd become something of a mentor to Terrell, and occasionally joined him and Zoe for dinner, sharing stories about his own daughter and the dreams he'd had for her. One evening, as they were leaving the building together, Reed asked, "Do you ever think about that night? When you found the memo?" Terrell nodded. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just thrown it away with the rest of the trash. I'd have lost my company. You'd still be working 2 jobs and struggling to make rent." Reed looked up at the Horizon Tech sign illuminated against the night sky. "Instead, we're both building something meaningful." From night janitor to project lead in 6 months, Terrell mused. Not bad. From recluse to human being again, Reed countered with a rare smile. Even better. As they parted ways in the parking garage, Reed to his Bentley, Terrell to the new hybrid car he'd recently purchased, Terrell reflected on how quickly life could change. One decision, one moment of doing the right thing even when there was no reward in sight, had altered the trajectory of his life and his daughter's future. And somewhere in that night shift no one had wanted, he'd found not just a job or a career, but a purpose, and reminded a billionaire that he had one too. Sometimes the most extraordinary opportunities come disguised as the jobs nobody wants, and the most meaningful connections form when we're just trying to do the right thing. Terrell didn't set out to change a billionaire's life or transform his own, he was simply a father trying to keep a roof over his daughter's head. Yet in that moment of integrity, both men found something they'd lost: hope. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us all that our character is revealed not in our moments of comfort, but in our times of challenge. And sometimes, the night shift that no one wants becomes the opportunity that changes everything.